Welcome back to Steve Robb Reviews. Today's review is going to be an interesting review for all of you that are not that proficient on, well, the use of a solar battery charge controller, what it does, how much money you should spend, where you should buy them. What's the whole idea behind charge controllers? I'll show you this one right here. And this is the style that I use on all my projects. I'll put a link down below to all my solar projects in my playlist, and you can take a look and you can see how, yeah, this is the style that I use for low amperage solar projects. And this is under $20. I'm going to bring this over to the bench and we're going to talk about some basics. We're not going to get into too much of electrical, but we're going to talk about some basics and the beginning understandings for somebody who doesn't know really too much about it, because if you're looking at a new technology, you're trying to understand something that, well, you have more questions than you really have any answers for, and you have to learn somehow, right? So I'm going to discuss how I've used these over the years, how I pick them, how I use them, you know, the best advice I could offer, and well, we are going to go into a little bit of electrical, but just the basics, that all you need to understand the differences between them. Because you have solar panels that have various voltages, various wattages. Then you got batteries that have various voltages. And you have to understand what kind of solar battery charge controller that you need. Because if you're looking to buy one, man, the options out there are just from like under $20 to $2,000. And where do you start? Well, you can look at this video and it's a great start on how I've learned a lot of things over time myself by experimenting and using charge controllers. And I'm going to share what I know today in a roundabout sense that's not really that specific. So let's get to it right now. So here is a charge controller, the instructions it came with, and the box it came in. And this one here is good for 12 volt to 24 volt. And that's the first thing you have to verify. Most systems on most lower amperage systems, for most, like I would say, do-it-yourselfers, is going to be on the 12. So this is common 12, 24 volt. And when we take a look at the amperage, it's a 20 amp unit. And I always recommend to pick one that's twice the amount of the amperage that you predict that you're going to actually use. Because when you're thinking about using a charge controller, you have to actually think of, well, your power usage needs and how much it's going to be related to actually what you're trying to, well, figure out. Because most people, they attach their charge controller to a power inverter to get either 120 volts or, in other countries, 240 volts. So all these have to match up together, and there's a huge discussion about power inverters as well, but today we're only going to discuss the charge controllers. So here we're looking at the charge controller, and this one here is very low cost, and it comes with 2 USB ports. I've never used these before. And it's got some menu selection knobs here. You know, just press button, and it's very simple to operate one of these. And this is really just a protection device. All this does is you have your, if you just take a look here, I'll zoom you in a little bit here so you can see better what we're looking at. And let's do that first. Okay, so I got you zoomed in there pretty good. And as you can see on the bottom, there's different symbols here. And you've got 2 leads that go here, 2 leads that go here, and 2 leads that go here. Now the last 2 leads are for, on this particular unit, is up to 10 amps, including the USB, which is 2.1 amps each, I believe. And you can hook these to, this would be a 12 volt or a 24 feed that would come out and go to a light or a circuit that you wanted to power. And the menu here will either turn this on or off, and most of them have even like a day timer where you can have this only operate for so many hours out of the day. Most situations, well, this is going to be, you know, a feed that stays on all the time. Like up at my camp there, I have a cell phone signal booster, and I tapped into these two lines here, and you know, this was the way to go. So if we take a look at here, you can see the symbol for the battery. So this is where you hook your two leads from your battery, and this is going to send the amperage from the solar panel to your battery. This is where the two leads go from your solar panel to the charge controller. So what the charge controller does is you put your leads in here, and the charge controller is a safety device with some switches. And all it's doing is turning off the amperage or turning on the amperage from your solar panel. And same with the voltage. It's regulating the voltage because solar panels have various voltages. They're all over 12 volts. So, you know, they have to regulate the voltage so it's usable to actually charge your battery with. So they don't want to overcharge your battery. So what it'll do is when your battery is charged up, it shuts off. And when the battery needs to be charged, this safety device turns it back on. It does it all, you know, in a split second. So if you take a look at the bottom here, that's where the leads go in. And if you're going to use, take for instance like this braided wire, well, I recommend that you solder the end here and then just get your hammer and just kind of flatten it out a bit before you actually insert it in here. Because when you insert just a braided wire, I find many times that this is all just gonna, well, it's gonna squish down on you, and over time it doesn't make that great a connection, you know, because it's only braided. So I always solder them, but it's a personal choice, you know, what you want to do. And you should really fuse everything that you have a hot wire. So on a 12 volt circuit DC, your wires should be black and red, and you know, the identifiers, and they should all be fused. Now, the only charge controller that I have is on my cabin that isn't one of these low-cost units, and it actually comes with a fuse socket built into it. And this is to maintain that the charge coming in from the solar panel is fused going to the charge going to the battery. So, you know, it depends on how much you're going to spend, right? But yeah, I would fuse everything. So let's get down to the diagram here that'll just explain some of the things on this charge controller. And if we just take a look here, this is the unit that I have, and it's 20 amps. And if we take a look at the different specs here, if we take a look at the discharge current, now that number right there, that is how much from these two posts, and I'll just get you in the shot here, right? The discharge current is going to be from the auxiliary posts on the end here. That's going to be your discharge current, including these two USBs. So let's look a little further down here, and this is for either a 12 volt battery or a 24 volt battery. And you could see how there's different specifications here, and these are adjustable. So the first one here is not going to be adjustable. That is your float charge, and that's going to keep your battery charged at a maximum of this voltage. And then the discharge stop will be this voltage. Now, you can adjust this one on many charge controllers, and I've got mine set to the maximum, and the highest voltage that I've got to have the discharge stop, which means it's draining your battery, and where does it going to stop before it goes too low, right? I always got mine set for 11.9, because when you get down to 11.9, you're about 60% discharged on your battery. And then you've got the discharge reconnect, and this is the voltage where it reconnects, and then the charge reconnect, and you can see that voltage there. So it's pretty simple, and when you take a look at how much does this thing actually use in current or amperage, well, it's about 10 milliamps, and you can see you go right across the board here, it's 10 milliamps regardless of the amperage. So up here, the maximum that I can use for this system is 20 amps, and you can see how the amperage goes up. So I picked 20 amps because really you need about four 100 watt solar panels to surpass 20 amps. You're going to be around 26, 28 amps. So this is good for probably 3 100 watt solar panels. So I like to actually go twice as much as what my maximum solar panel is going to put out. So we take a look at the my little garage up at my camp in Northern Ontario. I got 2 solar panels on there now, and they're putting out 10 amps. So this one here would be ideal, because the maximum the solar panel is putting out is 10 amps, and this is rated for 20. Now this particular unit here is just going to be a backup for that one up there, because yeah, you could spend $200 or more on a charge controller, or if you're handy like I am, I just swap in another one. It'll only take me a couple of minutes, and so far every one of these low-cost charge controllers that I've ever purchased, well, they're completely opposite than what I see in a lot of the reviews. I bought all of mine off of Amazon, and I've never had a problem yet. And if you read the reviews, man, you'd swear that this thing is going to burn your place down. But so far, I've had great success. So now we're just going to go into a little bit of electrical, nothing too much, just something to give you the basics of what you need to know when you're thinking about matching your charge controller to your particular system that you want. And the best advice I could give to anybody who's thinking about setting up a solar system themselves is to reverse engineer it. Figure out what you want to do at the end of your system. Not from the solar panel working back, but from your load, whatever device you want to plug in or use, go back in that direction. So then you could size your solar panel, your batteries, your voltage. You can do all this kind of things without running into the problem of doing it the opposite way, where you have to constantly modify things that you should have known in the beginning. So if you want to have an 1800 watt 120 volt system at the end that you can draw 15 amps off of, well, that's where you start, and then you reverse engineer it all the way back to your solar panel. So you match the solar panel to your battery bank, and it is a lot of math, but it's very simple. So let's go to a little bit of electrical here, and you'll see how easy electrical actually is. Okay, so I've got a couple of sheets of paper here to go through, and I just like to go over just the basics. And the fun part about being on YouTube is I have probably the smartest people on YouTube on my channel that are professional master electricians, and if they notice anything that's wrong here, well, they're going to bring it to my attention. But hopefully I don't make any mistakes. Okay, so all you have really in electrical is amperage, wattage, and voltage. Okay, so voltage is never the same between direct current, which is your battery, and alternating current, which is like your household utility. One is alternating, which is AC, and DC is direct current. You never want to attach any of these wires directly to each other. They're independent systems operating independently, but yes, you can have a DC battery provide direct current to a power inverter that accepts DC current and then converts it over to AC. So yeah, it's not directly connected, but yes, they all intersect with each other in a solar system. So if you want to find amperage, all you have to do is divide the wattage that you know by the voltage. And to find wattage, you just multiply the amperage by the voltage. And to find voltage, you divide the wattage by the amperage. So now we're going to get down to the bottom here. When it comes to AC or DC amperage, they are always the same. So when you take a reading of AC or DC amperage, they must be done on a different scale. They must be measured differently. But amperage is amperage, regardless if it's AC amperage or DC amperage. So 1 amp AC is 1 amp DC. There is absolutely no difference between them, but the voltages are different. Now when we get to a watt, 1 watt AC, when you're converting it to 1 watt DC, is not the same. Now it's close, but it's not the same. So generally what you'll find is, take for instance, if you have like a DC watt, say you have a 180 watt DC solar panel, well, it may be about 174 watts AC. So you go from 180 watts down to 174, 175. They're close, but no, you cannot match 1 watt AC to 1 watt DC generally. So let's go on to the next page here. Okay, so if you're interested in getting a solar panel system and you're hooking it up yourself, do a lot of investigations, do a lot of reading, and you'll find out that, well, you have to match your charge controller to the type of connections that you're making for your solar panels. So you have a parallel system and you have a series system. And in most situations, most people are going to be using the parallel system, and this type of charge controller, this low cost one here, is matched for parallel, not a series, because, well, it's all about voltages. And this is what these two pieces of paper are going to discuss right here. So say you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 solar panels. They're each 250 watts and they're 20 volts each. That's their ratings. Well, you're going to get 12.5 amps roughly coming out of each solar panel when the sun is shining. And as you can see, all the connections are tied together. You have all the positives tied together, you have all the negatives tied together. So at the end of these 6 panels, you have 1500 watts, 20 volts, 75 amps. You notice that the voltage never change. In a parallel connection of your solar panels, the voltage doesn't change, and that's why you can use one of these, because this has a maximum voltage of, in most situations, between 40 and 50 volts. So you have to decide on what kind of a charge controller matches your system, because if we go to the next page here, this is a series system. And as you can see, it's the same panel, but you take a look here and it's like a daisy chain. You go from the negative to the positive, negative to the positive, negative to the positive, all the way along. And in a series connection, when you get to the end, you still have 1500 watts, but look at the voltages. The voltages are added together, right? So you've got 6 times 20 volts. So you got 120 volts now. But the amperages did not increase. And this is the main thing. The amperages didn't add up together. They stay constant at 12.5, but the voltage in a series connection increases and is added on every panel. Now, this is far more voltage than this particular charge controller could ever handle. So depending on how you're setting up your solar system, well, you know what? You have to buy a completely different charge controller, and you're not going to get them for $20. I'll tell you that. You're going to pay a lot more, like 10 times more. But generally, most do-it-yourselfers, small systems, don't go with this idea here. Now, there's huge advantages of having 120 volts, because as you can see, you got 1500 watts, 120 volts, and like this is almost ready to go to plug into an appliance now, isn't it? Now, of course, this has all got to go through another electrical device before you actually can plug anything in, but you can see how the idea here, and the whole idea behind matching everything up, is your wire gauge size and your transmission. Where these panels are and how far it goes to be transmitted to wherever the end connection is. And there's benefits and there's losses in either system, but you can see if you're going to buy 6 panels and all you're going to get is 12.5 amps in a series, and then you go to the parallel connection and you got 75 amps, well, there's a huge difference there, isn't there? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a presentation on the charge controllers for your batteries. And if you're thinking about getting one and you're thinking about getting into it, there's so many resources out there, plenty of YouTube videos. You can go, to your library and get some books on it. But this is just a start, and a lot of people sometimes only need is just a little bit of a start and a bit of information to guide them in the right direction. But for everybody who's watching this video, well, there's a lot more to electricity and how it's transmitted and how it's used and safety factors and and these are all things that I like to go out of my way to understand myself. And it's best if I don't describe everything in detail, because it gives you the opportunity to actually learn things for yourself. And you'll understand it and absorb it better if you learn things yourself. So thanks for joining me here today. Come back again. If you haven't seen this channel before, you're welcome to subscribe and see more of what I do. And like I say, I'll put a link down below to my solar projects that I've done, and maybe you can pick up some tips off of that too. Cheers.